Welcome to a special episode of the Mindfully Gay podcast. I'm your host, John. Jerry and Nick are taking a break this week. Today, I'm thrilled to bring you a heartfelt interview with Tim, a member of our community who has found profound growth and happiness by engaging with Mindfully Gay. From early challenges to joyful revelations, Tim's story is a testament to the power of finding one's community. Let's dive into this inspiring journey. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mindfully Gay podcast. I'm John. As you can see, if you happen to be watching, you can see that I'm in a different location. Also, I don't have my other co-hosts. Don't have Nick or Jerry with me, but I do have my friend Tim with me. And one of the things that we often ask at the end of each podcast is for you to submit your ideas, to share your stories. And Tim is here to do just that. So I've asked Tim to join me with some morning coffee and to be interviewed on the podcast today and really talk about his experience with Mindfully Gay, because he's a kind of a new listener and participant and want to get his thoughts and ideas about, what's been happening for him. So thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. It's glad to be here.
All righty. Well, I'll just start just very formally.
Okay.
Maybe tell us a little bit who you are, maybe where you're from, what you do, and how did you hear about Mindfully Gay?
Well, my name's Tim, and I'm from Salt Lake City. I was born and raised in the Valley. What I do is, I'm an engineer now, just recently. And what was the other question?
And it's early here. And how did you hear about Mindfully Gay?
I heard it from you.
Yes,
I did.
You did.
Absolutely.
Do you remember that conversation?
I do, actually, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've been friends for about a year,
Mm-hmm.
and we were texting a little bit, and you were just kind of excited about this new thing that you were doing,
Right.
and you were telling me about it, and that's actually how I first heard it.
Right. And as we talked about it, because I probably just told you that I was doing this podcast with some friends, and what was intriguing about it to you that made you you start to question or think or kind of move forward with where you are now with it?
Well, it was just, as you were explaining it, it was the idea of kind of combining, that spirituality with a community. And honestly, I needed to connect with the community very, very much. I'm going through some big changes in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And those changes are mostly because I've been isolated from my community, among other things. We might get into it, we might not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had been searching for something a little bigger than where I was.
Mm-hmm.
I think my world had shrunk a little too much, and it needed to get bigger. I needed to connect with something larger than myself, because I was feeling a bit lost and abandoned. And I needed to really connect with who I was. I guess we'll get into it. I needed to connect with who I was before I got married
Mm-hmm.
to my husband, because there's a lot of things that I really enjoyed when I was by myself that I sort of gave up for the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely thought it was worth it. But it's becoming clear that it kind of wasn't, and it wasn't really fulfilling. And like I was in my 20s, I was very into like spirituality and like mysticism. I did some tarot cards, that sort of thing. Just something to kind of connect. I was raised LDS, like a lot of people here. And when I left the church because I was gay and I just didn't fit in, I was really trying to find something else. And in my mid-20s, when I got together with my husband before we could get married, I had found a bunch of those things. And then these things kind of made him a little uncomfortable. And so it ended up being like, well, I did them just on my own. And then I just didn't do them at all. And it was just kind of terrible.
Can I pause you there? So in your 20s, met your soon-to-be husband at that time. And but you said you were engaging in just some kind of spiritual things that just helped you kind of connect with something a little bit larger. Say a little bit more about that, because I'm curious what that was. And, you said you kind of set it aside.
You're gonna make me open up, aren't you?
A little bit. We're going to dig a little deep here. Because I'm curious about, were you able to recapture that, when you found Mindfully Gay, or was it different, or just to kind of do a little comparison, but also really to kind of speak to, because you're in your 20s, because there's a lot of young folks out there and they might be listening to this podcast, and I think they might be searching for the same kind of thing that you're searching for now, or even back then, community, something larger, spiritual, and may feel a little lost. So I'm just kind of wondering what it was back then for you that you were able to kind of find and say, oh, this works for me. But then you eventually kind of set it aside, because that might, I don't know, it might help some young folks out there to kind of start their exploration.
Well, back then it was, and I'm a bit independent. So I was very taken with the mysticism. And some people are a little afraid of him, but Aleister Crowley. And that sort of mysticism, that Carl Jung kind of thing. It really connected me, because I found with Mormonism, especially when I kind of started deconstructing my Mormonism, I found that the religion was nice and there was that structure to it, but it was missing spirituality. And I think most religions actually are missing that actual spirituality. There's a really good analogy by an author I love that says a lot of religions, the gods come and they start it and there's passion, and then this shell builds around it and the god slowly shrinks and shrinks and dies, and all that's left is the shell. And I was feeling a lot like that. And so the mysticism was giving me a touch point to really think, oh, I can reach out to the universe. I can reach out to something else and do that. And I really think that my husband wanted him to be the touch point. And that's a whole other story. But so that's what I was finding, and then that's what I lost. And the Mindfully Gay thing, and we'll get into these questions. One of the first things that I did after the Lake Blanche hike was do a sweat lodge. And even though it was a group, and even though there was kind of a leader, it was like me and the universe again. And it sort of allowed me to open that bit of myself up that I had been craving for the last 4 years, subconsciously. It allowed me to access that again and go, oh, this is really important to me. It's important for my own growth. It's important for my own mental stability. It was very important for, I don't know, I could list a bunch of reasons.
Yeah. Did you do the hike first, or did you listen to the podcast first?
I listened to the podcast. The first podcast I heard was the one right before Pride, where you were talking about gay gifts. I remember thinking, these are thoughts that I had in my 20s. But once again, back then I was so alone, because that was 1996 when I was 20, which was a long time ago. And even though it was okay back then, it's so much better now where you can be more open and you can really express yourself being, a homosexual man. And where was I going with this? Something about being alone. Oh yes, back then it was you just felt so alone. And so now I feel like the experiences that I've had, being very spiritual, have given me a sense that it's okay to be alone. That we're not exactly alone because there is something to connect to. There is a community, but at the same time, we are alone, and that's okay, and we need to be whole within ourselves, which is something I never got when I was young.
With that particular episode, we talk about gay gifts and blessings. And I know, we wanted to focus on just not to push aside or negate or to minimize, the many, uphill climbs that gay men in particular have to take as young gay men, as older gay men, etc. And Jerry was even pointing out, I think, in that episode that since he's a therapist, he sees a lot of folks and they talk about kind of these traumas and experiences and how hard it is. And we wanted to bring to that episode, but what are the blessings? What are the gifts that are also a part of being gay? And that's why, that's, kind of the root of mindfully gay, that we wanted to see and talk about and experience and share, that this is something quite magical, who we are and what we have to offer to the world. Right. And just to take a moment to, let's kind of dig deep and look at what do we offer.
And I think we all know that we have things to offer. And I think this is probably where I was going. I'm sorry, I'm not a morning person. That sense of being alone made me think, well, no, I have gifts, but there wasn't a place for me to share them.
Oh.
And this is a place for me to say, oh, I have gifts. It's a community that's being built around being authentic, being mindful, being able to share your gifts as they are, and being accepted. And even though I could think of some of those gifts, and I think some of your listeners know that they have gifts, if you're isolated and people aren't appreciating them, then you don't think of them as gifts.
Right. So did you kind of fit in that space where at some point or at some time you didn't think that your gifts were valuable or?
Oh yeah, a lot. Absolutely. For actually kind of a long time. And I'm sort of coming out of that shell and saying, no, damn it. I'm valuable. And that's okay. Even though for the longest time it didn't feel like it.
It didn't feel like it was okay. Yeah. What's a gift or a blessing that you say you have and that maybe got tucked away but is starting to reemerge?
I think my greatest gift, it's a hard one, but it's really wonderful when it works. I have the ability to love just about everything and everyone. And kind of take people for who they are. And that got smashed so hard because I kept putting myself in situations, or the society that we were living in had me in situations where I would value people, but I wasn't being valued. And so it ended up curling in on itself. And I stopped valuing myself for the natural things that I was interested in.
Right.
I think that's the short answer.
Yeah. I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
I think, I certainly can. Sometimes it feels like I put myself out there and it's good and it feels good at first, but then is anyone seeing this? Is anyone hearing this?
Yeah.
And it starts to feel like, well, maybe no one is hearing this or no one is seeing this. And I started to retreat and kind of, like you said, kind of backtrack a little bit, and I just kind of fell into myself.
Yeah.
And I still have moments like that. Like I put a lot of energy out there and then feel like, oh, well, it's not really being received, and kind of fall back. I'll answer this question, but I'm going to ask you first. So when that happens for you, or when that happened for you, how are you then able to, reemerge and continue to, like, wait a minute, I do have gifts. I am going to continue loving the way that I want to love and share.
Well, I think the interesting thing, and one of my other gifts is to be able to embrace paradox as well, is that when I said a little bit earlier that we are alone, but we are also part of a community. It's both, because we're alone in the community, and if we are alone and we are authentically ourselves, then you have to be alone. But if you have a community that accepts you as authentic, then that gives you that permission.
Yeah.
But when you're alone and not being accepted, then that just pushes you aside. And as much strength as you can have on the inside, it just withers and dies.
Yeah.
So it was reaching out and connecting with my community. Realizing that I had lost pretty much all of my friends in order to make my marriage work. Kind of allowed me to say, no, I'm going to reach out again. And it's weird. It's like the community needs to be there to help you reach out, but you actually have to reach out to break the cycle. And the longer you're in that circle of aloneness, the harder it is to reach out.
Yeah.
But you have to, I think.
Yeah.
And it's the reaching out that allows you to say, oh, wait, there is something I do have to offer. I think.
Yeah, I think you're really hitting it, and really hitting, I think, what we're trying to do with Mindfully Gay. You'll hear Jerry say this all the time. This exact feeling of feeling isolated, feeling alone, feeling scared and anxious when we've got these events out there, and we say, come join us, even if you feel anxious, even if you feel scared.
Oh yeah.
Just step into it. Step into that feeling and step into this experience, because you might be quite surprised. And you might find that this is exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
Because I know that's the case for me too, where when I find myself kind of spiraling out or down or whatever that is, that I have to do a little internal kick in the butt. Like, wait a minute, I've got people who listen to me. I've got people who do value me. I don't have to be, oh, woe is me, and have to kind of step into that and be aware of that and acknowledge that that's a real feeling, and go to the event or pick up the phone or even text someone or whatever the case may be, and just engage. And then I find that, oh, that's all I really needed to do. That's all I really needed to do. So you said you went to one of the events. Which event did you go to?
Well, I've been to, I think the Sweat Lodge wasn't officially Mindfully Gay. I think that was just something Jerry invited me to.
Oh, yes, okay.
I think that was In Spirit.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it sort of dovetails.
It does.
It's sort of the same thing. So I went to the Lake Blanche hike, was not prepared for that. I mean, I do work out and I am active, but I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of incredible. So that was a real challenge. But I enjoyed the challenge because it was like, hey, I can do this. I can reach out. And that was the first event that I went to.
Okay.
No, that's not true. I went to your little meditation thing. the Tuesday before that.
Oh, that's right. You certainly did.
I did.
Yeah.
Which was very fun. And you're doing another one tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 2 months ago tomorrow.
Right.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So there was that, and then the Blanche hike, which was fun, because that was actually just with Nick and Jerry and me.
That's right.
I was the only person who showed up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really looking forward to meeting a bunch of the people. And then the following week was a sweat lodge, which was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then the week after that was the heart circle and pipe ceremony.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I'm impressed actually that you've done so much really in a short amount of time. So you said the meditation that I led. You did the hike with Nick and Jerry, and you did the sweat, even though it wasn't a Mindfully Gay sponsored event.
Right.
It's still an experience that you had, and it's something that we do, and we have a retreat coming up. And I think you're going. Is that right?
Going.
And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. But you went to that, and I certainly want to hear about your experience a little bit with that, and the talking circle and pipe ceremony, which happens to be one of my kind of favorite gatherings. Any out of those four, I don't know, maybe is there a highlight or something that you gained from maybe each of those things, or a highlight from one of those things?
Well, the meditation, I'm just going to go. I'm an engineer, by the way. I do things by the book. So the meditation was good. I mean, I did some meditation in my 20s, but once again, that sort of fell out. So that was a nice reminder to kind of start to open up a bit. And actually, I really enjoyed the candle meditation. And I didn't say this, but my husband hates candles. He thinks it's stealing the air from the room. And so they can't be in the house, even though I'm like, this is a meditative thing. And that's one of the reasons why I really liked it, because I was like, this is awesome. So that was great. The hike really taught me that I can push myself. I'm going to do the heart circle first.
Okay.
Because I came to that, and I don't know if they know how this goes, but you come to these events with intentions. You come to these events with a purpose. It's not just showing up. I mean, you can, but I definitely wanted to get something out of it. So my intention that night was to just break through my own fears of rejection that have built up over the years, to be able to just say whatever was on my mind and not censor myself. Be able to say really just anything and look people in the eye. And if they didn't like it, accept it. And if they did, that was great too. And so there's like a talking stick, and it was passed around, and you got to say whatever whatever was on your mind. And some people didn't say something, others did. There were people really going through some stuff. And of course I talked about, the stuff that was going on in my life, and really trying to connect to what I can control or what I can do to make my life better. And it was kind of freeing. I mean, there was a lot of talking, like down to the carpet, for me. But there were moments when I could look up and people were looking and being very encouraging. And it felt really good to just have people there to listen. And that's the other nice thing. You can talk, people aren't really interrupting you. And then, and then after that, we, smoked the pipe, which is an amazing ceremony, like you say, because can I talk about this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So the pipe is loaded.
Yeah.
And it's like the tobacco is a prayer, because when you smoke it, the smoke raises up to heaven, to the ancestors, to the universe. And it's really an offering. And so the pipes are loaded and placed on the altar, which is not a scary thing, even though there's a buffalo skull. It's actually quite wonderful. And then as we're talking, all of those things and all of those intentions and everything that we had brought to the experience were loaded into that like a prayer, like an offering. You're going to get me emotional. And then when everybody had finished talking, and it was very nice, Jerry said, does anybody want to say anything else? And I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot like 2 things that I wanted to say. And I was like, oh, but I'm going to be embarrassed because I'm asking for a second chance to talk. And I was like, no, you need to do this for yourself. You need to do something for yourself.
Yeah.
And so I took a stick back and I said my piece and then gave the stick back and was like, okay, I actually stood up for myself.
Yes.
And I didn't hold back.
Mm-hmm.
And then the pipe carriers, I guess that's what you call them. I mean, the spirits are kind of called in and it ends up being really sacred and very private. And I mean, when you talk in these circles to alleviate anybody's fears, it's really kept completely confidential. This is something that you don't talk about anybody else's experience. And then the pipes are smoked, and it's not smoked as in inhaled. It's passed around. It's like an offering. So you pull the smoke in and you give it to the ancestors. And Jerry said this amazing thing: pull it in, and when you blow it out, envision what you're asking for.
Yes.
And the pipes are taken around, and you don't have to smoke. You can if you want. And you bless yourself, you bless the ancestors, you bless the spirits. And then there was just this amazing feeling of like peace afterwards. Because, I mean, maybe it's a little like journaling. People say you journal and you get what's in your head on page.
Yeah.
But this is like getting it out into something that almost feels more powerful because it's like people who can do stuff about it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing this because I really do want people who might be listening to this or watching this to kind of get an idea of like, so what are these guys doing? You know, what's happening? You know, if they're going to the website and seeing these events, you know, heart circle, pipe ceremony, we're like, what the heck, right? And I think you described it quite nicely, and I'm just going to fill in some gaps a little bit. You know, in this heart circle or a talking circle, you know, there's a gathering, and it could just be 3 people. It could even be 2 people. But it sounds, I think, as I recall, I mean, I wasn't there, but I recall there was a good number of people that were there, and Jerry kind of leads it, and you do sit in circle. It's a ceremony, and tobacco in this practice is quite sacred, and use that word. It's a sacred component in prayer work and intention work. And so in this particular ceremony, the pipe ceremony is a very powerful experience. It can be a very powerful experience. And as an opening, Jerry calls in the directions, right? There's a little bit of singing and prayerful work, and he calls in the directions as a way to calling in the ancestors, calling into the spirits to be witness to what's about to happen, right? And inviting them to sit and listen to the words of those who are sitting in circle here, and to take their intentions, take their prayers, and bless them basically with their intentions, give them what they're asking for. And I think that's what happens. And everyone has an opportunity to speak if they'd like to. There's the stick, and, you know, kind of the talking stick, and you have an opportunity to talk. And I think what's wonderful and valuable about that piece is that you get to talk from your heart and just say what you need and want to say. And like you said, without interruption. People are there, present with you, listening, and holding space for you. And
I like those words.
We're missing that. I think we're missing that in just kind of everyday stuff, not being heard. And that's a setting where you're being heard. You get to say what you need to say. And then, like with your experience, you said your piece and it kind of went around, and Jerry asked, is there anything else? And you didn't hold back. You said, wait a minute, I do have something else to say, and said it because you had that opportunity. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. And then once everything is said, imagine, all those words, all those prayers, all those spoken words are going into that pipe. The pipe is really sitting there as a witness to these words and intentions. And then when that pipe is loaded, not only with tobacco, but with your prayers, then it's smoked. Right. So Jerry lights it. And like you said, you're not inhaling the smoke. Right. You're creating smoke. You kind of pull in and you exhale. The smoke goes out into the air, and that's the offering. Right. And that final ask of help me out, bring me, what I'm asking for, produce for me, manifest for me what I'm asking for. And that's the ceremony. Is that what it kind of felt like for you?
Yeah, that was really well put.
And Jerry's going to be doing more of those. So do look for those on our schedule, because I think he's going to be doing them every other month. So watch for those on the schedule. Talk about your experience with Lodge.
So the Lodge was fun in a really challenging way. And I remember once you had described it for me. And I remember after you had described this, my first thought was, this is a place I need to be. The people who are engaged in this, these are people I want to be around. And I think that it can be a little scary because there's stories out there, and so Lodge, he's built a lodge. Isn't it like poplar that he goes and gets? And the group, the people who've been doing this for a while with Jerry, actually come together as the community, and they help build the lodge. So they build the framework, and they spread the tarps over it. And so they build this place that is almost completely sealed. And it's pitch black in there. And there's a fire pit, and there's a pathway. And so once again, you have the pipes loaded.
Yes.
And they're there as witness from the fire to the lodge. And this is kind of like a high ceremony. I think it's the pipe ceremony kind of taken a little bit to a higher level. And so you ask to be invited in, and you sit around. And I came to this having had it described for me. And I don't know if you want to do that or if you want me to kind of do that, but I sort of knew some of the things that were going to go on. So I had kind of an idea of, okay, I'm ready to do this, but I also knew this was going to be an experience that you can talk about, but you have to experience it for yourself. And we've heard this before, and I even think somebody else on your podcast had said, and it's like going into a womb. It's like going back to the mother. And then at the end of the ceremony, you're reborn. And you can read about it, you can have it described to you, but until you do it, you haven't actually done it. And so you enter, everybody gets in. Jerry explains a lot of things. He's very good at explaining. It's already a little bit warm in there, but you're just like, we're going to do this. And it's a bunch of men sitting in this space. And the rocks are brought in, and there's, some chants, and there's some stories, And then the cover of this lodge is closed. And when I say pitch black, I mean pitch black.
It's pretty dark in there.
And it brings me back to that thing where you're part of this community because you can feel people around you and hear people.
Yeah.
But because it's pitch black, you're alone.
Yeah.
And it's kind of amazing. And then the heat starts. And it is sort of a trial. But in a good way, because we need trials in our life to I think unlock our strength, to show us what we're made of, to show us what we're capable of. And there is singing, and there's so I'm just going to get in, and you can fill in the blanks again. So there's 4 rounds,
Yes.
for each of the 4 cardinal directions, and so east, south, west, north. And each of those directions has a given spirit.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to give too much away because sometimes I like people to just experience things, but you can fill in the gaps. And so he calls on that particular spirit. And this is something I did want to say. The first round is about asking about things for yourself.
Yeah.
Because unlike a lot of religions where you're meant to sacrifice for the Lord, this is a place where you can say, and it's almost important to say, you as the petitioner needs to be satisfied first. You need to be filled first. Your cup needs to be filled first before you can fill others' cups. And that's what the first round is. It's asking for things that you need. And I remember being a little timid. I mean, I brought intentions, but I didn't really understand.
Sure.
So I actually drew 6 cards from my tarot deck and was like, okay, these are the things that I'm going to focus on because I need to bring something. And since I haven't experienced it, I don't really know what this is about. And so I asked for those things. And then we were also asked to call on the spirits and the ancestors that are important to me. So both of my parents have passed. And I have a great grandmother that I had never met, but my mother loved. And so I called her. And I called these people to be witness for me, to say, hey, I need you. Maybe perhaps the way you weren't there for me in this life. And it was a little intimidating to ask for things for myself. It really, really was. But as the ceremony went on, I realized, oh no, this is a place, and this is very different from Mormonism and very different from some of our religions. It's not begging the Lord for things. It's standing up and saying, I need this. And you need to find a way to A, give it to me, B, show me the path, C, give me the strength to get it for myself.
Yes.
And it's very powerful. And it's the kind of thing where you can, there's a point at the end of that round with the singing and the steam and the heat and the sweating. And oh my God, let me tell you, there's sweating. I didn't know that there was that much water. Please come hydrated to these things. And there's a place at the end where everybody starts to pray for themselves all at once. It's a cacophony, but it's also, it allows you to be completely free because everyone else is concentrated on them. So you can concentrate on you and you don't have to worry about what you say.
Right.
You just say it.
Right.
And then there's a second round, which is for the people that you love. And that can include yourself as well.
That's
so
right.
then once you filled your cup, you begin to fill others' cups. And then the third round, and it just gets hotter and hotter and hotter, by the way. They do open the door between each round and, because they have to bring more stones in.
Correct.
But so you do get a tiny bit of relief, but it just builds. And so the third round is actually quite intense. But it's absolutely doable. And that is about your enemies or people that you're having struggles with because they're human too. And then the fourth round is really about opening up to the spirit and everything else. And there's talking and singing and, some people who've been through the lodge sometimes are invited to sing. People who seem to be apprentices are, invited to tell stories or to do certain things as part of the ceremony. And at the end of it, you exit into the cool air, and it is kind of like being reborn. And then you sit around the dying embers of the fire that has witnessed everything, and you smoke the pipes again, just like that pipe ceremony.
Right.
And everything that you've poured into, and it's not blood, but it's sweat and tears sometimes into this, is then given to the air and given away. And I will tell you that the result of that is all 6 of the things that I asked for, without me really thinking, oh, this is really going to happen, started to manifest even like 2 days later.
Wow.
And it was like, oh, this is a powerful thing. I can really ask for what I want, and I'm going to get it. And I think as gay men, we are sort of taught to give and give and give. And it was nice to be able to say, oh, I'm going to get given to. Yes. And then once again, like for me, my gift is to love people. I feel like I can love people again. Anyway, that was my experience, and it was super powerful. And it sort of gave me something to hold on to as I went back into the world. And being back in the world is difficult because these are experiences that are not, but they are removed from the world. They're removed from all this bullshit that we're living through. But it's nice to be able to go back there and say, I've experienced this. I know it's real. Yeah. And I feel like I'm bearing my testimony all over again. But it works if you give yourself to it. Yeah. And that's the wonderful thing about Sweat Lodge is you have to give yourself to it because it's uncomfortable in there. But that's the point. That's the point. The universe is like, I had to make you uncomfortable or you wouldn't have moved. Right, right. I don't think I need to fill in any gaps. You really nailed it. And I appreciate you sharing your personal experience with that. I think what I want to highlight is, that comparison to like Mormonism and even other types of religions where, there's sacrifice and the way that you pray and all that kind of stuff that kind of goes along with those particular practices. Where in this particular ritual, in this ceremony, you get to and are encouraged to and expected to pray for yourself. Ask for what you need. Like you said, stand up. Even though we're sitting in the lodge, you don't stand up in the lodge. No, please don't. But you're standing up for yourself. You're standing up and declaring, "This is what I need." And Jerry will say this all the time. We don't have to be timid and kind of, please, please, please. It's not a begging kind of thing. And am I worthy of what I'm asking for? You are definitely worthy. You are definitely deserving of what you're asking for. You just ask. Just ask. And that's a shift, I think, that people will perhaps experience if they do a ritual like this. It's going to feel odd at first because this is not the way maybe you were taught to pray or how you pray now, or if you ever prayed at all, right? This might be very, very new and foreign. But Jerry would say, ask for what you need. That's the role of the ancestors and spirits. We've asked them to come in. They are here. I picture, and I say this in the very first episode of our podcast, this council of people, of ancestors, these spirits, just, there. I can see them like they're taking notes. They're ready. They're on the ready. John, what do you need? And they're taking notes. Got it? Anything else? Okay, got it? And we'll be on our way. Yeah. We're going to get to work. That's what I feel happens in lodge, in prayer, in the heart circles, in the pipe ceremonies. They're showing up for us. And like you said, you can call on your own lineage.
grandmothers, grandfathers, aunts, uncles from your lineage, but it might even be folks who aren't even a part of your lineage, because they're going to show up anyway.
Yeah.
They're going to show up anyway.
Yeah.
And so they're on your side. Just ask for what you need. The experience, I think, can be, I mean, this is an understatement. It's just so powerful. It is so powerful. And it may not happen, you may be asking for things and it may not show up at that very moment.
Nope.
Right?
Yep.
It might happen a few days later. It might happen a week or two later. It might even happen a few months later. It's going to show up. But if we have an open heart and have an open mind, I believe that those things will show up in the way they're supposed to show up, those things that we're asking for. So again, I appreciate you sharing your experience with that. And hopefully that's an invitation for others who maybe have had questions about, what goes on. We've had
a lot of sweating.
There is a lot of sweating. I mean, yes, it is called a sweat lodge. Yes, there is a fire outside. There are fire keepers, and they tend to the fire. And after each round, yes, the door opens, gives you some relief. It gives you an opportunity to kind of speak, talk about your experience. Meanwhile, the fire tenders are bringing in more stones into the lodge. And that's what creates the steam, because Jerry, or whoever is pouring the lodge, they have a bucket of water, which has been blessed. They're pouring water on those stones, and that's creating the steam. And there's a round of healing. And that's the powerful one. And so there's a lot of water being poured on that, on the rocks. A lot of steam is produced.
Yep.
You're feeling it. You are feeling it. It's intense. It's hard.
Great.
And it can be great. You're going to come out anew, reborn.
Yep.
And that powerful medicine stays with you. That's what we believe. Stays with you, and you can call on that medicine anytime. You don't have to always go to lodge, but you can call on the medicine of the lodge.
Right.
We're going to be doing a retreat, and I believe this particular episode is airing a week before the retreat.
Okay.
So you're registered for the retreat. Yes.
Yes.
I'll say a little bit about it, but why did you register? Why are you deciding to come, and maybe what are you hoping to expect?
Well, I mean, the website kind of tells you what's going on. So there's going to be yoga, there's going to be food, there's going to be community, there's going to be heart circles, there's going to be a lodge, I think, at the end of it. And these are all things I've participated in. But those things were kind of like 3 hours. Well, lodge was more like 4, kind of total, including the fun community and the food afterwards, which is always nice. But this is something that's combined together.
Yeah.
And it's 48 hours where you can just check out from the world and to really focus on what's going on and to really bring yourself. I don't know what I'm going to get out of it because I'm not there yet. And that's another thing that I've begun to take away from this, is to be here now with whatever it is now. And that helps with some of those things you said. It may be 2 months from now that you get your intentions manifested, because that's in the universe's time.
Yeah.
And that's where that piece of submission happens that I think gets lost in a lot of religions. It's like submit always. And yes, you do that, but you submit in this very powerful way. I would like to add where you said it's the council that they're taking down, and that's the thing. This can be such a personal experience, and I want to impress upon that upon your listeners, is that everyone's going to take something different away.
Yeah.
Whereas I think sometimes religion and Mormonism, they want you to take a very specific thing away. I took away that there was this host of warriors that were standing there. And it's not as if they were exactly helping me and, doing exactly what you said, which is probably what you needed. And I think that's very, and you have to honor that, and I honor that for you. This was them saying, are you going to stand up in front of us like a warrior? And it was an invitation.
Yeah, love that.
You're going to make me cry. And so everybody is going to take something different away, and it's going to be personal, and you can share it if you want. So I don't know what I'm going to get out of retreat. I'm hoping to get some community. I'm hoping to reach out and to meet some people and to make some friends and people that I would like to do things outside of this.
Yeah.
But it is a touch point. And I also think that in this society, even though we're so focused on religion and all these things and the things that make us Americans and the things that make us, Christians or whatever, we do need that structure in our lives. And so these periodic things that Jerry is offering and that you guys are offering with this community, I think are touch points, and I think they're important. But you're also right that we take that into the world with us.
Yes.
And we can come back to it, but occasionally you do get drained. Occasionally you do get empty, and once again, you start to feel alone. And so this is something to come back to.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah.
So
yeah. I'll wrap up with just saying the retreat is, like you said, it's it's a couple days. It's a culmination of these individual events that we've had on the calendar, which you've had an opportunity to do. The meditation, you did the hike, pipe ceremony, lodge. Now let's just pack it all together into one big experience. And that's exactly what the retreat is. There's several talking circles because you get to talk about and process and share just your experience, your life experience, this experience that you're having during the retreat. Is there any shifting that you're witnessing or feeling? And, after, having just come together as a group and being a community with sharing food, going to a yoga class. Was there something happening there for you? These talking circles. And then, it wraps up with the lodge on Saturday night. And just as you explained and talked about. And then what we do on Sunday morning is kind of talk about the experience. And like you said, it's then carry that out into the world with you. Now you've got this, I don't know, I'm envisioning like this nice full set of bags, luggage perhaps of, you just went shopping and got your luxury bags of all these wonderful tools and items with you. Like, yay, I can get out there and do my thing. But inevitably, you might feel drained or alone again, or these old feelings start to show up again. And what's wonderful is that the medicine is still there. Come back to lodge. Come back to a meditation class. Or maybe you did connect with somebody or a couple of people at the retreat. Call them up. Get together. Do something. And that can be, rejuvenating for you. That's medicine, to kind of keep you going. So, so an invitation to join us on this retreat, September 20th through the 22nd. And I'll be there. Tim's going to be there. You'll get to meet him. He doesn't know I'm going to ask him this, but I'm going to ask him now because I've invited you to talk about your experience with Mindfully Gay so far, and you haven't done the retreat yet. I'd love to ask you to come back and maybe talk about your experience with the retreat.
Sure. And
share your experience with the audience. Would you be willing to do that?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Tim, so much for sharing and taking the time. And thank you for taking the time to watch and listen. Go back to other episodes if you've missed some, or re-listen to some of our podcast episodes. I think there's a lot that we have talked about and that you might resonate with. Try out some of our events. Our events are free. The retreat is not, but the other events are. And to help create community, join community, and try some of these things out. But if this retreat really seems like something you want to do this fall, join us. Just go to mindfullygay.com. You'll find all the information there, as well as the other events. You can follow us on Instagram. Our Instagram is mindfully_gay. I think that's correct. Hopefully I'm right, and I'll make sure that's in the show notes just to be sure. But that's another way you can kind of follow some of our content. And if you're just listening to this, you can also watch our podcast. We're on YouTube, and it's just Mindfully Gay. So I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We just ask you to be authentic, stay true to yourself, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Mindfully Gay podcast. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Mindfully Gay podcast. We hope Tim's story has inspired you to embrace your path and the communities that uplift you. Remember, we'd love to hear your stories too. Share them with us on Instagram at mindfully_gay. And don't forget to check out mindfullygay.com for information on our free social events and the upcoming retreat. We appreciate your support and look forward to bringing more stories like Tim's into the spotlight. Until next time, keep celebrating your truth.